Hello, and welcome to another episode of eDiscovery Chicks, the podcast about all things eDiscovery and legal tech, hosted by two gals who are stoked beyond belief to welcome a best-selling author to our little homegrown pod. We're your hosts. That's Bree.
And that's Angie. And yes, we feel very special. Not only do we have a best-selling author, I think she's like Amazon's top seller. And I just happen to know she got the CEO's award last month. I mean, she's kind of a baddie. So I feel pretty privileged that she's spending time with us today. We are going to be talking about focus, which obviously I'm having a hard time doing, just being starstruck and all. But if you are feeling stuck or feeling like you don't know where to focus all of your energy or spirit this year, this is the episode for you. So before we even get started even further, Angie, I feel like I've tortured them enough. Maybe you should do some introductions.
I suppose so. I mean, everyone must be burning with anticipation at this point. Today we are thrilled to welcome Nicole Mott to the podcast. Nicole is the Director of Sales Enablement at Exterro and the founder of Mentality Movement, where she's basically built a whole philosophy around closing the gap between thinking and doing. She's also the author of the best-selling book, The Undeniable Power of Movement, a book that's all about the habits behind execution, focus, discipline, and creating real momentum, even and especially when you feel stuck. And Nicole's career is very built in the real world. She's held leadership and enablement roles across companies like OneTrust and Intuitive Surgical, and now she's at Exterro. So, without further ado, Nicole, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. And I'm honored to be on your podcast. So thank you for having me.
Well, we all feel special.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, before we get started grilling you, Nicole, and trying to suck all the wisdom from your brain, we kind of like to do a little bit of an icebreaker. And I thought, I mean, you are a unique guest to us because you're fairly new to the e-discovery industry and legal tech in general. And being that you know a lot of things about a lot of things, I'm curious what your outlook is for 2026. What excites you about legal tech for e-discovery for this year?
Yeah, I've only been in eDiscovery for a year and a half. So I've learned a lot over that 18-month period. And I think the thing that excites me the most is the synergy of the elite habits that we're going to talk about on the podcast and AI to get the huge ROI that everyone's looking for. And I know we're going to go more into AI, but that is what's really exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The conversation around AI has changed in the last few months in a really exciting way. So, yeah, we're going to dig into that in a second. But before we really get to chit-chatting, tell us about your book, The Undeniable Power of Movement. It's a bestseller on Amazon. It's a banger of a read, can confirm. I listened to it, though, because I love my audiobooks. Tell us, what's the premise of your book? Why did you write it? And what do you hope people will learn when they read it?
The reason I wrote it is because I was in enablement and conducting these training classes, and I kept hearing, I don't have time to do this. And I kept observing these behaviors where people would get stuck and they wouldn't meet a task or meet a goal, complete a project. And I started just really thinking about that. And I also have other people that have inspired me outside of my career or my professional world that also said, hey, you need to write this book. And one of those people is my oldest son, Caleb. Caleb has Tourette syndrome, but he was able to find that purpose, get rid of his distractions, and put the discipline in place to meet the level in soccer that he wanted to be at. And it's a very interesting story. And I always say, if he can do it, I know anybody can do it. So he has really inspired me, along with my other son and my husband. But it's like that story that really captured my attention and said, this is why I want to do it. So my book's The Undeniable Power of Movement. And it is exactly what you said, Angie. It is about helping people that get stuck in that transition phase between thinking and acting by applying these elite habits that we're going to talk about. And I want just the audience to know that when I talk about movement, I'm talking about an action a person takes to complete a task, a project, or reach a goal. In my book, you already said this, the foundation is focus and discipline. And I have two ways of helping people. One is, how do you get started? I call this methodology of movement. And the three things you have to get started is you have to define the purpose. You have to know your why. If you don't have that why, it's going to be really hard for you to get started. You have to reduce distractions and you have to implement discipline. And then to continue movement, I call this essentials for movement. This is your mindset, awareness and self control, health and human capacity. And you probably heard me mention discipline twice already, because that is a really, really hard thing for people to do. Because a lot of times they're waiting for that motivation to show up before they act. And discipline is acting without having that motivation. So that is a little bit about my book and how I help people.
That's awesome. And I know that you've mentioned the elite habits that your book identifies. Can you tell us, what does that mean? What are those all about?
Yeah. So, like I said, it is really about having that purpose, finding that why, reducing those distractions, having that growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset, making sure that you have the emotional intelligence to continue that, so that awareness and self control. Health is extremely important because how we feel throughout the day can really affect how we move. And then the human capacity, it's all about structure, processes that you put in place, how organized you are and how prepared you are.
So I'm kind of in the camp of, I think I'm a reasonably smart person. Like maybe it depends on what day of the week it is.
Only on days
But
that end in Y.
well, maybe that's for you, Angie.
Aw.
It also depends on who you ask, because my son might not agree. But, people like me, we get stuck, and it might not be about all things in your life or all goals that you have, but certainly there are areas which, I don't know, mine might be physical fitness and, like, taking care of my health. I'm not saying that, but sometimes we just get stuck. And I'm kind of curious, like, what have you seen in terms of trends with people, maybe like me or others, that are like, we get what you're saying. We understand what you're saying. Like, this logically makes sense, but we cannot get unstuck. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's that transition phase. They don't know how to take that next step, or if they do get started with something, they don't know how to continue. And they're waiting for something, clarity, they're waiting for motivation, or they don't have that purpose. So they really have not defined that purpose of why they should act. That's a huge piece, is that you need to have that purpose, because without that purpose, you're probably just going to stay still.
So I really love this concept of starting with why. It's one of the first sort of self-help books that I ever read, is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And it really has stuck with me over the years because it's so true. If you don't have a why behind what you're doing, you're not going to follow through on it. And like, this makes sense, right? But I think the thing that people often miss is that your why isn't just, well, I want to work out more because I want to be fit. It's like, all right, well, what does being fit mean to you? Does it mean having more confidence, being comfortable in your own skin? Does it mean living up to some version of yourself that you want to be? So for me, it's not just the surface level why, but it's actually the deeper level why, and how whatever you're doing resonates with your core identity as a person.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And in my book, I put these little activities at the end of each chapter. I call them inner discovery. And some of those questions are helping you to understand your why, or helping you to find that purpose. Your why can be, I want to reach this goal because XYZ. But it also can be, I need to move, I need to take action because of a consequence that you may face. So it could be different depending on the situation.
The fear component.
Like the fear component.
Yeah.
I also have the fear of messing it up, because I have only messed up trying to lose weight about 50,000 million times in my life. So,
Yeah.
Free
you know,
math.
exactly. So it's like that fear of failure, like, ugh,
Yeah.
I don't even want to try to start, because as soon as I do, I'm just going to disappoint myself again. What would you say
Yeah.
to somebody who might feel stuck because they're afraid to fail?
I'd probably start asking you questions first.
Oh. That sounds terrible.
Ooh,
Yeah.
let's do
Yeah.
this in real
No, let's
time.
not. Why did I open my mouth?
Yeah.
Y'all
Yeah.
didn't know, but this is actually Bree's therapy appointment.
Oh
We're just live
gosh.
recording it.
We just lost everybody that's listening.
No, no. Yeah, no, I mean, I would as a coach, I probably would start asking you questions first and make sure that your goal is realistic. And I would probably ask questions around what have you tried so far? If you had anything that you could try, what would you try? And try to really get down to is this realistic? Do you really have a purpose behind it? What have you tried that hasn't worked? And what else could you try? I would ask those questions before I'd offer you any suggestions. I'd really need to dig into that.
I like that. One thing that you're kind of talking about here is breaking it down into maybe digestible. Maybe that's a bad comparison to somebody who's trying to lose weight. It's a digestible pieces. But if somebody's feeling overwhelmed, like what's one decision or the first decision that you would recommend that they should make to get their power back?
But yeah, so if they're feeling overwhelmed, I would say the fastest way to regain control is not by doing more. Instead, decide what no longer gets access to you today. So decide what you can delegate to another person or another day on your calendar. It doesn't just have to be another person. And this is just called prioritizing. If you don't do this, people tend to start to multitask. And studies show that multitasking is not productive, at least certain types of multitasking. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, so
When
let's pause on multitasking for a sec, because I know this is something that a ton of people do. I mean, how many meetings have you been in where somebody is also simultaneously reading their email? So talk to us when you say multitasking, what do you mean and why is it so ineffective?
Yeah. So when I'm talking about multitasking, I'm talking about when you have to be focused on two or more tasks at one time in order to be effective. So for an example, if I was on a conference call and I needed to really listen to what was being said, but I'm also trying to craft an email that's extremely important, there's no way you can put your full focus into both of those and have the outcome you want. So either you're going to be asking the person on the call to repeat themselves or it's going to delay on how you're doing the email. So that's what I'm talking about by multitasking. Or if you're texting and driving, you really don't want to do that. Okay. But if there's
Don't at me, Bree. I see your face right now.
I know. I know we all do it sometimes, but it's important not to do it because you may miss your exit or even worse things can happen. And we all know what that can happen. You can get in an accident and hurt someone. That's what I mean by multitasking. For example, if you're on the soccer field and you're playing a game, obviously you're multitasking in the decisions that you're making. I mean, do you kick it to this person on this side of the field? Do you kick it up the field? Do you take it yourself? You have to quickly make those decisions. So you're multitasking while you're moving. Also, if you are really good at a task, like you have a muscle memory, for example, like walking on a treadmill. If you can do that where you don't need to focus on that and then also type an email at the same time, that's different. So that is a form of multitasking, but that's not the multitasking I'm talking about.
That's a recipe for disaster for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot walk straight. I'm like the friend that will walk you into a wall.
Yeah.
I also, for the record, Angie is the person that I was driving around in a car with, talking to, and I missed my exit not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Oh my
Angie's like, "Oh my
goodness.
god, are you okay?"
It's like, "Are you well?"
Yeah.
No, the treadmill thing, I was doing one of those Peloton, walk and in the scenic ones, right? Where it's in a you go somewhere in the world and do it. And I was
Yeah.
on some sort of like plank bridge in this scenic walk, and it was sort of the plank bridge was sort of swaying back and forth, and I like almost crashed off the treadmill
Oh my
watching that. I was
god.
like, "I can't do
Oh my
this."
goodness.
Um, but actually, so speaking of working out, one of the things that you emphasize in your book is this just kind of get started thing. And like recently, I was feeling a little bit stuck. I'm not one to get stuck when it comes to fitness stuff. That's sort of like my anxiety off gassing mechanism. But I'd been pretty sick for 3 weeks and was out of my routine and just was still feeling kind of crappy. And I told myself, all right, Ange, just go do 10 minutes, right? Go do
Mm.
10 minutes of arms and just start again. And I did. And then I thought, I'll add on 10 minutes of abs. I'll add on 10 minutes of legs. Maybe I'll go run a mile. And then before I knew it, I'd been working out for 45 minutes and I felt amazing. And my point here is that sometimes it's just getting started that really helps. So, what is one small, movement, and I'm using that term in the broadest sense, but what's one small movement you could recommend when somebody's stuck? Something they can do in, I don't know, 5 minutes or less.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this in a more general way. So I look at this in two ways: moving forward or not allowing you to stand still. So to move forward, you have to ask yourself things like, "What can I finish today?" This can be the next step in a process or a plan, or like in your workout scenario, you're like, "I'm just going to start and do 10 minutes," but then you eventually add it on because you started feeling good. You
Mm-hmm.
started feeling the benefits of it. Or you can also ask yourself, what distraction can I remove? And this can be in your workout situation. Maybe you were typing emails or watching a movie or something. There was something else holding you back. It's like turn the TV off or shut the computer and just go type of thing. In a business world, maybe this is a meeting that is more of a preference meeting and not a priority meeting that you can move on your calendar. I'm not big at moving things on my calendar, but every once in a while there are things that can be moved and that may need to be moved depending on what emergencies pop up. But you just got to move that one meeting on your calendar to allow you some more focus time or movement. And it also can be an emotion that you're feeling. So this can be anxiety, stress, anger, anything like that you can remove. Now, to avoid standing still, one of the things is make sure you stick to implementing your processes. So, this, like I talked about my son Caleb, he stuck to his process. It was called behavioral therapy process. And he worked with a psychologist to do this, but he stuck to his process, which a lot of kids don't do. I was actually very surprised he was able to do this. And he didn't allow those ticks to come in while he was playing soccer. So before all of this, he would be in a soccer game and he had this tick where he had to stretch his arms out. And he would get a handball because of it. So it affected the team, it affected his play. The behavioral therapist said, "Okay, if you feel like you need to do that, put your hands by your side and squint your fist." And he did, and it worked. So it's like not allowing those distractions to come in can help. So if it is removing just, one of those emotions or something like that, and then being able to say no. And I don't mean always to another person. I'm also talking about you have to say no to yourself sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, so for
Yep.
example, yeah. For example, if you're in a deep thought or you're focused on something and your phone rings because you didn't turn off your notifications or you didn't put it on vibrate, what do? Do you take the call? If you do, that's just allowing a distraction to come in and it's messed up your thought process and your focus time. So it's being able to say no to yourself too. And then, you can get to that later. They're going to leave a voicemail if it's important, or they're going to send you a text or something like that. You'll get to after you finish that thought process or focusing on whatever you're focusing on.
Okay, please never leave me a voicemail. I will never respond to it or listen to it.
I know
Oh,
that is
man.
kind of old, huh?
I know. My mailbox gets full, and I'm like, "Nah, I don't even know if I really wanna empty it out right now." Speaking of saying no, what's that? "I'm just a girl who can't say no." That I have a problem, with saying no, and a lot of times what that problem does for me is I get overwhelmed. So when you do lose momentum, what is your reset ritual, Nicole? What do you do to get moving again fast?
I drink coffee.
Sounds amazing. Is there Bailey's in
I'm
it?
joking, but I'm not joking.
So
All
we're
right.
all relying on some sort of
Yeah,
addiction right now. Okay, great. Love it.
Sweet. I like
Love
this
it.
therapy session. It's
I
amazing.
know. No, okay, I'll be serious now. Look, momentum loss is normal. It's very important to reset that speed and not the perfection. So a lot of people just lose that momentum because they feel like they haven't mastered something. They're a perfectionist. My reset ritual is accepting what I'm feeling and then talking about it with my accountability partner, which is my husband. Luckily, he's retired now and he can be there whenever I need him. And he doesn't have to focus on, a job, and he can help me. So I turn to him a lot. But some people have, life coaches or even their managers or their accountability partner, but having that person to talk to really helps. And then I just put my head down, I focus, and I do it. I move, I act. It's kind of a timing thing. But going back to coffee, around 2 or 3 p.m. is typically when I start to lose momentum every day. That I just get really tired, probably because I get up early in the morning. So I do have a cup of coffee, or I'll do things like spend 15 minutes talking to my husband, taking a walk outside just to get that fresh air and sunlight. Changing environments, just moving from my office to the kitchen sometimes helps me when I'm working. Or if it's really bad, this truly does help, but a 15 to 20-minute power nap. And I think that
My
helps
God,
me
I
a
love a
lot.
power nap.
Yeah. But I think you have to know yourself and know what works for you to help you continue to move. So maybe you just have to test things out every now and then to see what works. But those are just some things that I try or do.
I love that. I've aged into power napping and like 10 out of 10. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So this is a grandma like thing to say, but I didn't know the power of a power nap until I got a CPAP.
Oh,
Now that I
wow.
have a CPAP, I'm like, this is what everybody's been talking about. Like, this is what it's like to really sleep. This is amazing.
This is
Yeah.
lit.
So I'm in.
What's
I
funny is they sent out this thing. I remember reading the study that drink a little caffeine and then take a power nap, and it really helps reset you. So I don't know. It's just
Hmm,
different for
oh,
people.
interesting.
that is the way. It's like a shot of espresso, 15-minute power nap, and you come back and you're like, "Have I risen from the dead?" Yes, I have.
Or if you're me, it's like, wait, what day is it?
Like, hold on.
Yeah.
I love that. Because Nicole, I'm like you, I get the afternoon slumps so bad. 3 p.m.
Yeah.
hits and I'm like, I simply can't anymore. So sometimes I'll just go, this sounds insane, but like I'll just go and sprint on the treadmill for like 20 minutes, just like clear it out, and then come back and feel better.
Yeah, I think that definitely helps. That helps with me as well. And I think knowing when you focus the best, like what time of the day. For me, it's definitely not afternoon or evenings. You can forget that. My focus time has to be in the morning. I'm just a morning person. But there are a lot of people that, especially students, they're up till midnight, 1, 2 in the morning studying. And I'm like, oh my God, I never did that in college. I would not be able
Hooligans.
to function.
All right, I'm going to transition us to talking about something that's related, which is this concept of awareness and self control in the age of AI, because AI can be a wonderful, wonderful tool or an immense distraction. And so, Nicole, what is one way that AI, and when I say AI, I'm primarily talking about LLMs like your chat GPTs and your Claudes and that kind of thing. What is one way that AI can give somebody their brain back this week, like a real practical win?
Using AI to reduce cognitive load, like summarizing, structuring, and clarifying, not deciding, I think can really help and give them their brain back. For me, I draw the line with AI by not using it to outsource decision making. It can support processing for me, but not my judgment. And I think that's really important. And you have to be cautious because AI is not always accurate. We know that. We've put stuff in there, we've gotten stuff back, and you're like, yeah, no, you just know it's not right. So you have to be cautious. And this is why I believe you must choose a company's AI that they build and manage their own models and that they have a high confidence and accuracy rate. They're also very secure and that you have direct access to. For me, that gives me more confidence. And this is why there always should be humans in the loop, in my opinion. Also, there are no specific prompt patterns that work for every situation. And that is one reason why you have to be creative and specific because what you put directly into AI affects what you get out of it. But for me, I use it for like summarizing, structuring, and clarifying.
So I think that it's amazing to hear both of you kind of go back and forth regarding AI because I've learned so much from both of you in different capacities. But I'm curious, we had talked before, Nicole, about perception. So I'm going to kind of steer the conversation to a little bit of a different direction. And it's something that I know that I really have struggled with in my career. I guess now we're turning it into the Breeze counseling session again. Sorry about that.
Yay,
But
therapy.
yay. But one thing that I've learned is that my natural given, personality and ways of dealing with things and communicating are not always perceived the way that I intend them to be perceived. And I especially grappled with this early in my career. I'm curious, what your thoughts are in regards to managing perception. You've said that that matters. What did you learn the hard way about being right, but not being effective?
Yeah, I talk a lot about managing perception in my book. I think it's something that people overlook. It's a very important topic, actually. These are the moments where execution was solid for me, but communication, timing, or framing failed me. So I'll tell a little story. Early in my career, I was demoted. And not because my execution results were not good, but because my passion affected the way I communicated. People perceived me as challenging them. So I was demoted, not fired, because I still executed, I still produced good work, but they didn't want me to work underneath them because they felt like I was challenging them. So I talk, like I said, a lot about this in my book because I learned the hard way that if you need other people to help you reach your goals, then you better care about what they think. And a lot of people go around saying, I don't care about what people think. It's not what people think. And I 100% disagree if you need someone to help you reach your goals. And a lot of times in the business world, you do. So I learned to put more focus on the how instead of the what. It's like how I communicated things and also knowing the right time. This is where that awareness comes in, that emotional intelligence, because that is extremely important too.
Yeah, I love your thoughts on that. And something that I personally had to get over was the idea of like, hey, just because I'm communicating in a meaningful way so that they or the receiving party understands my intentions doesn't mean that I'm losing myself and I'm giving in to somebody's idea because I do not like to be told to do. I have never been a kid that wanted their parents to tell them what they do, and I certainly don't want anybody to tell me how to think or how to communicate.
Yeah.
So I will be the first
Bree,
one to
don't
buck the
talk like
system.
that.
This is Angie, just put, step off. And so it's like all my little, hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I'm like, they can't tell me what to do and how to be. Like, I'm Brie. That's who I am.
Yeah.
But when you do change the way of communicating to be, received in the way that you intend for it to be received, it really can be a challenging, process. And some of that, as I've gotten older, I've learned to talk to people I trust, like, "Hey, Angie, did I sound like I was being too negative, or
Mhm.
was I being too demanding?" Just
Yeah,
to kinda
no.
understand. But, Angie and I talk about this when we talk about cross collaboration and eDiscovery. If you are dealing with folks in legal, you can't approach an attorney, generally speaking, with an IT workflow and expect that that's going to be the most effective way to communicate the process. In the same way, you wouldn't go to IT and start, talking about legal analysis. Like, they don't care. They want to hear about a workflow, right? They like graphs and charts and flow charts and stuff. So I think that that's kind of how I've learned to see it. It's like it's not really changing who you are. It's more of delivering a message in a meaningful way for the receiving party. And we all do this in relationships too. It's like the whole love language thing.
Yeah.
What's their love language? That's how you want to communicate with them. So they give you back what you want to give them, right?
Oh, I
Anyway,
Yeah.
I
suck
just
at that.
completely went off on a tangent.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's all about tailoring the message. And the most impactful sales book that I have ever read was The Challenger Sell. That one really caught my attention. I was like, wow, this is about value and insights and tailoring your message so you can get to the person you need to get to at the right time and say the right things so that you can either influence them or whatever it is that you need to do. And I think you're right. And it is very hard. It took me years to get this. It took me years to start actually getting people to see the great work that I do, and for me to like get to different levels that I wanted to get to. That was really important to me. I think, Bree, it's like impact is not just about what you do, it is whether people can see it, trust you, and understand it. That's
Mhm.
extremely important. And you also need good leaders to help you. So I talk about at the end of my book, it says improve within, elevate others, and win in results. I truly believe that. I believe it so much that a few months ago, I got it tattooed on my arm. It literally says, improve within, elevate others, everyone succeeds. I also have a family crest that I put in the middle of that. But I believe that so much. And I believe you have to have people that can elevate you. In my book, I put some statistics in there. It says 16% of leaders are considered elite. Okay. So if you think about that, and how many times you worked for a leader that did not actually elevate you. Probably
Yeah.
a lot more than than
Like
what people think.
95% of them.
Yeah, so yeah, elite leaders actually help elevate others, and so the question becomes, if you don't work for a great leader, what do you do? Well, most people get stuck instead of actually finding creative ways to build that trust and get people to see what they need them to see and understand their great work. They
Mhm.
just get stuck and they either accept it and keep living down that path and don't make any movements. What's really interesting is the research showed 8% of people actually reach their goals. That is extremely low to me. At first, I didn't believe it. And then I started looking at other studies, but they get stuck in that transition phase, like I talked about earlier, the movement between that insight and execution. And most people don't get stuck because they don't know what to do. They're not taking that action that's needed or applying those elite habits in that transition phase that's needed, or they don't have the support team that's needed. So they have to find those creative ways to work around that.
I love that. I want to pause for a beat and talk about stress and the ways that stress can affect the way that you manage perception and specifically what it can do to your emotional intelligence. So, have you ever had an experience like that where, you're so stressed out and you sort of like it almost feels like you lose sight of who you are because the stress is running your life? And like how do you manage that?
Definitely. Lots of times in my life.
I'm going
Are
through it
you
at the
human?
moment.
Yeah. Personal life, professional life. Yeah. I mean, there are things that I do for myself that work. Working out is one thing that really does help with my stress. Having someone to talk to, that accountability coach. Let me just put it this way. If I have a lot of stress, I now know how to have that awareness and know how to accept that feeling. That's what I first have to do. I have to accept the feeling. And then I may talk to someone, to help me get through things. Then it's like testing one solution at a time, is taking baby steps and starting that motion again. There are other things in my life that help keep me on track, like the messages from my church. I honestly feel like that's therapy session for me every week. But those type of things just help keep me on track.
So I'm wondering, as we are closing out today, if you could give people, our listeners, one superpower for career growth, what would it be?
I think the superpower would be the balance between IQ and EQ, EQ meaning emotional intelligence. I believe IQ gets us started, and EQ, the soft skills, help us to continue on. So I would want that superpower, and then credibility will come. If you can get that right, credibility will come.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will add to that having emotionally intelligent leadership can be such a force multiplier in an organization. Like if the head of command is somebody who makes their people feel seen, that's a superpower.
I would also say, Nicole, you made the statement earlier, like, what do you do whenever your leader is not effective, which is probably a lot of people listening today. And
Huge.
I think that there's another part of that perspective to kind of be thought about in the sense that you can be a leader even though you're not in a leadership role. And sometimes you being a leader in the little crappy spot where you feel like you found yourself planted
Mhm.
actually ends up being one of those really empowering moments in your life. I can tell you in those moments, I've probably become more emotionally intelligent than I have in moments where I felt like everything was working out pretty nice. Because those are the times when you're like, "Oh my god, like, what did I do to get here? Like, how do I even deal with this? Like, I'm miserable." And those are the times that you start really doing that self-analysis, and I would challenge folks, if you are in a spot like that or if you have poor leadership, look into yourself and figure out what you have control over and decide that those are the things that where you wanna start. Angie and I talked a lot about, what do we have in our control what's in our control and what's not in our control,
Mhm.
and that's an important question to ask yourself if you're stuck there. But I don't know, Nicole, if you have anything that you would add for folks that might be in that position.
Yeah, Brie, I would definitely agree with you. I talk a lot about internal and external distractions, and your internal distractions are things you can control, like your emotions. Your external distractions are things that you cannot control, so you have to learn to manage them. So it's like maybe the company changes a policy, or they change pricing, or they change your pay structure. Those are things that you have to manage, and you can't necessarily change or control that. And look, I always say this to anybody. Sometimes you're in working for a company and then it becomes not a good fit for you. You have the choice to move. You have the choice to go somewhere else. So don't be miserable. I worked for this company for 4 years. I was so miserable, mainly because I had never worked in an office before, and I had to go into an office, being in a cubicle, drive an hour to work every day, an hour to work home every day, and it felt like torture to me. But I thought my purpose was they paid me well, they gave me a lot of stock. That was not enough for me to stay at that company. And also the leadership there was not good, not good at all. No one was helping me at all. But I would say in these type of situations, if you do feel like this is still a good fit and you want to stay here and you just don't have a great leader, then start working cross collaboratively. And sometimes you'll find somebody that sees the good in you and good what you do, and they'll start talking about you. And then it'll get to your leader and it'll get to other people. And that's how it works. So
Mhm.
that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for coming to our little homegrown podcast and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you wanna share before we wrap up here?
I would just, I guess, leave people with a few things that have really helped, and I've seen it not just help me, but in others. I'm going to say this again: start focusing on improving within. Start there, and following structure, processes, staying organized, and preparing has never failed me. So these are the types of habits that are critical to start and continue movement, and they help you to focus and stay disciplined. So I would say make sure you have structure and some processes in place and stick to it. And then going back to AI cannot get you to execute. Okay. That takes effort, and anything that we do takes effort. So you have to put in the effort. And then, if you said this earlier, Brie, sometimes leaders, you don't have to be a leader, have that title to actually be a leader or coach. And I agree with you. I think anybody that can affect another person, impact another person in any way is a leader or a coach. So you have to really, once you improve within, you have to elevate others. And I think a lot of times in the business world, leaders are coaching always to a number and not the behavior. And you got to take a step back and really look at the behavior and stop coaching to the number. Because once people get behavior right, the numbers will come. And then everyone wins in results.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think there's maybe a reframe here where being a leader isn't your title, it's your behavior.
Oh, I don't know if this helps anybody out there, but it's been surprising to me in my career where I've exhibited leadership skills in a non-leadership position, and then later in my career have met up with folks who wanna hire me, wanna promote me, wanna grow me,
Yeah.
and I wasn't expecting it, but they saw my performance earlier on, and they're like, "Yeah, this is the person that we can trust," and so you never know who's watching you and where they might have opportunity down the road and might snag you and take you along, you never know.
Not in a
Yeah.
creepy way,
No, well, yeah, not in a creepy way.
in a helpful way.
Yes.
Um,
Definitely, definitely.
well, okay, Nicole, we have absolutely loved chatting with you today. You have shared so much wisdom with our listeners, and we are so lucky to have had one of Amazon's best-selling authors on this podcast. Everyone listening, you should absolutely check out Nicole's book. It is called The Undeniable Power of Movement, available on Amazon, through Audible, or wherever else you get your books. So, yeah, Nicole, really, really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you for being here, Nicole. It does mean a lot that you would spend the time with us and that you'd help our listeners too. So thank you so much for taking the time out.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, folks, thanks so much for joining us on eDiscovery Chicks. We hope you learned something new, felt empowered, and most importantly, walked away with a little bit more movement. One clear next step, a little bit of a sharper focus, and the discipline to follow through. Join the flock by following us on LinkedIn and Instagram, and check out our website, eDiscoveryChicks.com. If you loved this episode, please share it with your network, leave us a review, or tag us on your socials, and tell us what you're doing this week to cut down the overwhelm and stay in motion. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Bye.
Bye. The views we've expressed today are the eDiscovery Chicks views and don't necessarily represent the views of our employers, partners, or clients. The podcast is available solely for educational purposes to provide general information about eDiscovery principles and not to provide legal advice to any specific situation. It is not a substitute for legal advice from a lawyer you retained or who has agreed to represent you.